This evening, we have two very interesting guests. Dr. Tim Brigham earned his PhD in psychology from the University of Georgia. He's a former professor of psychology, presented to the Society for Scientific Exploration, and served as contributing editor to Jim Moseley's Saucer Smear. He now works as a clinical leader at a renowned trauma and addiction recovery facility in the American Southwest. We also have Andres Ruiz, a dedicated psychotherapist specializing in trauma and dissociative disorders. He brings impressive credentials with master's degrees in both philosophy and clinical social work. In his practice, he skillfully integrates EMDR, ego state therapy, somatic experiencing, and hypnosis to support his clients. We hope you enjoy the show, and please chime in with any questions you have for our guests.
Well, we are back. And Craftbeard has a duck in his portal.
We made it back and try it again.
Yes, thanks. I want to thank the viewers for coming over and joining us here. But I apologize for that. Tony needs to touch your inner triangle. I thought I could use my own meeting server and just avoid professional grade streaming software, but I digress. So again, let me thank you all for coming tonight and putting up with this nonsense. But I do want to talk about a few serious things, and I think we had kind of gone around in the circle, and I'm not going to look at the comments, and talked about our own personal philosophy. And I don't know if we could just do that really quickly again, if it's okay. I was basically saying that I think that the ingredients for life are out there. Obviously, science has discovered that that the ingredients for life are the universe is filled with the ingredients for life. We don't know if other planets have been as lucky as we, but anyway, I don't think that's what we're looking at here, and so that's why I'm skeptical. And I had mentioned I was more skeptical of humans than anything else. So that was my take. If you all don't mind briefly giving yours again. I don't think everyone heard it in the audience.
Yeah, you want to go first?
Sure. The primary thing I think I'm skeptical of is the claim of visitation, either by beings from another planet or other dimensions. I think the question of if life exists out there somewhere in the universe, most people typically would agree yes, just based on statistics alone. But what I think the evidence really falls short is, based on the public evidence, that we have good justifiable reason to believe that we are being visited by something, or that something predates us, has been living here all along. I think based on the available public evidence, I think that belief is unjustifiable, and that's where my skepticism comes in.
Yeah, sure. And I'd go right along with you guys that I think most people would agree that likelihood is that life probably exists elsewhere in the universe. Whether it's ever come here or not, of course, is an entirely different question. And I think, like you guys, it's unlikely that that what we're talking about here is related to extraterrestrial life. I think it's things that are better understood and from a point of view of social dynamics and kind of collective human experience and the way people process and remember information. And there's a lot of reasons why people see UFOs. I wouldn't say that psychological reasons, quote unquote, explain UFOs, but we have to kind of take human psychology and into account as we look at the variety of things that cause UFO sightings, whether it be faulty recollection or a misperception or an outright hoax or a medical event or a government cover story to, hide developed technology or whatever. But and yeah, the evidence, regardless, after 70 plus years, remains minimal that any of these claims really represent something that's not that we couldn't explain from a prosaic perspective, I think. So, and there's of course a lot we could talk a lot more than that, but I think as a zoomed out view, that might suffice.
One thing I had asked earlier is that I don't think we can do this. Some of this is going to sound like I'm bringing evidence for something, but I think what I was talking about earlier was having a background, having some context, right, of what I call the body of work, and in my show notes, I've got this timeline of just from basically 2001 from Richard, Greer's press conference at the National Press Club, all the way till now. And I think if you take a look at that timeline, you'll see that there is this body of work that took work to. Did we lose Tim? Uh-oh.
I'm sure I'll be back. There he is.
Television. I was just saying this concept of the body of work I'm talking about is the whole thing, right? And I don't think you can look at the time period that we're talking about, even if you just go from, I think you have to go back to at least like 2006, when I think that the private lobbyists got to Congress, with the creation of, Harry Reid's ATIP program, which is highly, disputed or whatever. But I'm just saying, if you look from that time period to now, there is this, it's hard to look at this without looking at it as an organized effort, and so.
What would you call it? Like commercialized or industrialized ufology, or?
I mean, I have my own personal theories, I wasn't trying to bring those too much, but I'm trying to figure out how to create context for the show without talking about the fact that we're talking about people manipulating other people, deceiving people. And it's hard to even talk about without, sounding like a conspiracy. Right now, the way it feels is that if that is more of a conspiracy theory than UFOs themselves, if you say, I think that there's a coordinated effort, that whistleblowers are vetted, recruited, released on a schedule, all the videos are, selected, whatever, released on, and you know what I mean? There's a complete coordination of everything. I think you and I had this conversation like a year ago, Andres, where you kind of pushed back a little bit on it, I remember. But I don't think you can talk about the psychological side of this without at least acknowledging, some coordinated effort.
Yep.
And I've had guests who've admitted that they're working groups out there doing just that. So my concern is, and the reason I asked you all on the show was to talk about the effects of this ongoing, I've seen it for 50 years. I know I don't look that old, but I am, this ongoing, never ending manipulation of people's minds. It has to wear down our society and culture at some point, unless enough people ignore and just move on. This show was hard to organize or put together because I want to hear what you all have to say, but I don't know how to ask. I don't know how to necessarily ask the question.
Well, I'm just curious. It sounds like you're tiptoeing around the question of whether or not there is psychological manipulation going on in an organized fashion, because you're afraid that it might make you sound conspiratorial. I don't think it makes you sound conspiratorial. We all know conspiracies in the real world actually happen historically and contemporarily. The term conspiracy theory just has gotten a bad rap because of all the bullshit ones that have been attached to the real life ones. But we know that people meet secretly behind the scenes to push their own goals without anyone else knowing about it. I don't think it's that conspiratorial. And we know historically, at least people like Richard Doty have engaged in psychological manipulations by his own admission. So I don't think there's anything kind of icky being able to recognize that. That's historical fact. To what extent is it organized, I think, is the interesting question. There's a sense in which clearly there's an organized push in ufology by many different subgroups. I think it's more bottom-up approach. I don't think there's a top-down kind of psyop going on trying to push for this narrative. I think these narratives arise from the ground up, and there's no top-down kind of model needed.
Now I remember our debate. That was our debate. I remember you and I debated whether it was top-down or bottom-up. That's what it was. And this was like over a year ago we were talking about, because I presented my little timeline, my little hype cycle graph. But what do you think about that, Tim?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of things. I think there's the cottage industry aspect to it, where maybe it would be preferable to think that it's just a bunch of grifters who stay in touch and decide they're going to promote each other's new videos or whatever. But definitely always has been, go look at Jack Brewer. I was just watching him talk earlier about his book about the NICAP days, and Wayward Sons was the name of the book. There were, there was intelligence people involved in that stuff back then. Sometimes it was to look out for communists, right? It sometimes had nothing to do with the topic of UFOs directly. But yeah, certainly with the New York Times article and the 2017 or 2016, there was a
Yankee Blue
an organized push, which seems to involve people who, to whatever degree they're actually still employed by. I don't know, right? I mean, same thing with Doty. At some point, he was supposedly instructed by someone to do these things, but is he still, or does he just do it for his own sick kicks, or I don't know.
No, I asked him about the working group, and he talked about it and said people were still working. And then I kind of joked with him off the air, and I was like, hey, what does it take to get into your working group? And he thought that was funny. He's like, we're pretty selective. I was like, oh, darn it.
When he said they were still active, I mean, it's my understanding that the working group is not an official government sanctioned group. It's a group of people loosely affiliated from different fields and military. It's not in an official capacity, is my understanding, right?
I think most of this is unofficial, but more like they're more like my electricians and plumbers. As a general contractor, they're more like my electricians and plumbers. They're electricians and plumbers to, upstream. Because we know that the American in state or in country, whatever, intelligence agencies are not supposed to play these types of games on American citizens, right? And I think they may be, for me, it feels like they're working for, defense contractors or something. I don't know. I don't get a clear read. All I know is that it seems, I've talked to enough people to where, to me, it's kind of obvious. But when you talk to true blue believers, they think you're just a purposeful debunker. You're just out to get the aliens. And so.
Can I just ask you, I guess my question is, number one, why would you believe anything he has to say, specifically about this claim? Number two, even if we did believe that there is some aspect of the working group, whatever that is, still operating, according to him, what is it that working group does? So
let me ask you a question, okay? Mm-hmm. I'll be one of those weirdos that ask you a question to answer your question. How do you think Harry Reid got involved back in 2006? You think he just sit in his office one day? I think I'll go ask for $22 million and create a program. No, don't you think he was lobbied?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I did some research on all these Congress people. You can just go down the list. They all look like they've been lobbied. They're all, they're courted with special, knowledge. And then they're brought into skiffs and they have to sign NDAs. I had one guest cancel a show over me asking him if he'd signed an NDA. Okay. and he was a congressperson. To me, people in elected office should not be allowed to sign NDAs to go listen to classified information that's possibly not even true, right? And then withhold it from the American citizens, right? Because they are selfishly wanting to learn information, knowing they can't share it publicly. So the jesters, as I call them, can come back and say, "Well, look, well, women can go on national news and say, I've seen evidence, or basically I've heard evidence, right? I've heard." So she went in and skiff. She got briefed on whatever. And now she can say, I was briefed. And the implication is on true classified information that may not be true, right? So the implications keep living on. Now it's the cancer has grown into our Congress. That's the last respite. The representatives of the people have been hazed.
Yeah, I was not to, I don't think it's off topic, but the thing with Kirkpatrick just talking, made those comments yesterday. I think it was about the hazing program, and was it the Air Force where they briefed people on non-existent, reverse engineered ET technology.
Wasn't that the Yankee Blue or whatever? I think that was their little code name. They love their code names. But that's history. I don't like saying I've talked to people. I sound like one of those Congress people when I say I've had conversations. I used to hate when I hear people say that. But the history of the United States is fraught with that kind of thing, right? I mean, I was joking with Doty, and I was like, I feel like the intelligence community is like a men's club, and y'all get together on Sundays and sip martinis, and half of you decide who's going to be the white hats, and the other half of you decide who's going to be the black hats. And he was like, "It's like that. It's like that."
So I just want to go back to my question. I don't think you answered my question, because I think the implication you're kind of making is, well, it sounds to me like what you were implying is, who do you think is lobbying those Congress people, possibly people like the working group? Is that right? But is that fair to say that that's kind of what you were getting at?
I've looked into who the lobbyists are, and I think obviously they have to be registered lobbyists, right? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly who the lobbyists are and how they're doing it. They may not have to follow regular lobbying rules because of the claim of classified information, right?
Or if they claim it's a scientific education or something and fly Burleson to Mexico or whatever. I don't know if that would fall under the same guidelines or not.
So did that answer your question, or was I leading up to the answer to your question, Andres?
So my original question was, why would you trust Doty about anything? But then the second one is, according to him, what is the function of the working group, such that even though he says they're still active today, according to him, what is it that he claims the working group is responsible for doing when they're active?
It came out after I was joking about the men's club, and he basically said, yes, there are people who play the roles, especially in social media on X. They play both sides, basically. Right.
So that's one of the roles of at least some people in the working group is playing both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I've experienced my own. I've had my own experience with some of these people. So, they exist. Okay.
Sure.
I can promise you. But it's not. It feels strange talking about it. I'll be honest with you, but I don't know why that's so hard to believe. It's very easy to believe when you look at the history of the way people are manipulated for whatever purpose.
I don't
I
think
mean,
it's
look at the drone flap in New Jersey. That's just one little thing that was blown way out of proportion. There was never even one image or video of an actual thing that didn't look like a plane, a business jet, a business class jet from underneath. And the whole world thought it was aliens. They had the whole, you know what I mean? That takes some effort, you know.
So you're saying they're promoting the idea is what they're promoting the idea of UFO or of extraterrestrials, or
Yeah. You don't feel that? You don't experience it? I mean, you don't have Matt Ford and this Merritt guy daily criticizing Mick West. I mean,
yes.
I can't even look at Twitter anymore without a post someone criticizing Mick West. You know,
I guess so. I guess my question to you is, I think you're half right. You're accurately perceiving real patterns in the world. By that, I mean you are noticing obviously organized groups trying to push a semi-unified message in a certain direction. That is obviously true. My question for you is, it sounds to me like the implication there is that in your mind, this group knowingly is pushing things that they know to be false as if they were true. Whereas my contention is, I think a lot of these organized groups are full of true believers who are organizing for the same reasons any group organizes, to try to push for a cause that they believe generally is true or real. I think what you're picking up is accurate, but I think maybe the interpretation of the intentions and motives behind it might be where we differ.
can I share one thing here? I don't think I'm going to blow up this. I don't think I'm going to blow up this internet. Chrome tab. Okay, am I sharing this? Am I screen sharing that? Let's see. Here we go.
There we go.
I'm getting retrained on StreamYard again. Okay. What do you think this is?
Narco trafficking.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you what you think this is. Let's go back.
Thermal view of the same boat.
That is exactly what that is. Now, when Jeremy Corbell releases a video, it looks like this. When they want you to know it's Narcos, it's the other one. That's the same drone. So for every UFO video that's been released, there's an HD version that's being withheld from you. So I'm saying, what is that? Is that not a deliberate deception?
If you assume a lot of things, yes. If you assume it's a deception, if we knew who was leaking these and for what reason, and that's exactly what we don't know. So it is
what reason?
Well,
the reason is to convince you that there are UFOs flying around. That's
one possible model
coming out of the mouths of Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp.
Yes,
I'm not creating that. Model, I didn't create that scenario. They did.
Right, and I guess where I disagree, I guess, is that model is perfectly compatible with evidence like with what you just suggested. But there's another equally compelling, equally explanatory model that is true believers behind the scenes have been leaking these things to people like Jeremy Corbell because they generally believe that these things are real, actually compelling footage of something mysterious. And we are not in a position to determine whether or not it's a true believer behind the scenes or a psyop trying to deliberately push misinformation on us without added information that we don't have access to.
Did you watch my? I know nobody watches my. I hope they watch this one. Did you watch my Michael Sinkowski interview? The guy who literally was the one that saw the jellyfish on the. He was the one that recorded, or he was watching the scope or whatever, right?
Yep.
He says it's not it's not anomalous. He came on the show and said, no, that's not alien. That's not right. But Jeremy Corbell released it. It's alien. It's a You know what I mean? So who is right? The people who are actually there at the base at the time witnessing these things, or Jerry McCorbell?
I think there's also a general trend in UFOs that's long been known. You know, they call it falling off the UFO cliff, right? Where you start to believe one thing and then you believe something much more out there. But more than that, if you're making a full-time job or a living off of UFOs, there's only so many UFO videos you can talk about unless you start kind of lowering your standard as to what's acceptable to put out there as a UFO, right? At least, I mean, that's probably, I'm sure that's not the entirety of the explanation, but if you got to come out with a new video every day, you'll put out whatever you can get a hold of, whether you will admit to yourself or not that it's not what you're claiming it is. I don't know, but just another angle to think about, right?
Can I ask Tony? Let me just give you an example. I'm just curious what you make of this. It's been kind of rumored for a while that the person who was leaking these videos to Jeremy Corbell was David Grush. And one of the reasons that's kind of typically kind of rumor speculated is that the timing of those releases seem to coincide with him coming out. And then when he came out and he left where he was working, they seem to have slowed down to a trickle. It's speculation, but let's just assume for the sake of argument that David Grush was the person giving these videos secretly to Corbell. It is one possibility is David Grush is a true believer, and he was giving videos like these to Corbell because he genuinely believed that they revealed something anomalous and he wanted the message out. Option B is David Grush knows that this is bullshit and he's deliberately engaged in a disinformation campaign by sharing videos like these to spread misinformation. I don't know from the amount of evidence that we have available to us that we have enough to go with B over A. I think they're both equally consistent with what we know. And I think the easier explanation, at least in my mind, is some people in the government are true believers who generally believe these things. And because they think they're doing the right thing, they're spreading these videos. It's possible that B is true. But I think that will require some stronger evidence of that PSYOP actually taking place than we have access to.
I don't think it's unreasonable to take in a critical path for both options and see where it ends, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, right. They're both reasonable.
So that you can keep your eye open for signals, you know.
Right. And it's not a question. Yeah, and I don't think either view is unreasonable. Two views that are mutually incompatible can reasonably be believed by rational people. The problem is, do we have enough evidence to say that B seems far more likely than A? I don't think we do. And I think, in fact, A explains more than B does. In terms of, number one, we would have to have a motive for why they would engage in this kind of PSYOP for, 70 years? To what end? And why such a small community? This kind of PSYOP seems like a massive waste of time given just how small ufology is, despite how big the community thinks they are. What is it that they would be achieving by engaging in a 70-year-long campaign to spread belief in UFOs, given how little traction it's really taken either in the
I think you're underestimating the traction it's gotten. I mean, they're not, Barack Obama was joking around on a podcast and said, yeah, they're real or whatever. And then he has to retract it. Trump is on a plane. He's saying, he's talking about classified information. It's on the national news daily. I think they've done that's when people got mad at me 2 years ago or 3 years ago after I interviewed Louis Elizondo. And I said, I think he's doing a job. He's doing a good job at what he's doing. You know what I mean? That the job they're doing is working. I think that was their job, is to get it into the mainstream. And that's what they did. And they accomplished their goal. Mm-hmm. And at some point when you've seen it enough, you just treat it like it's a big game,
I mean, I guess you could argue that it's a malleable cover story that would continue to perpetuate for every next generation of technology. I don't know if
that's Doty's, and I know I keep quoting Doty, but he was in the heart of some of this stuff, right? He was taking. He admitted they had treated Benowitz wrong, right? He kind of confessed. It's not like it's not like he's lying. I mean, Benowitz thought he was looking at aliens, and Doty just agreed with him. He didn't have to convince him, right? That was his job was to go agree with him, not convince him.
Mhm.
So the point there is that he was talking about how this is, perpetuated through time since the effectiveness of it was discovered. I think even back in the 40s with Roswell, I think they had a new toy to play with, So to me, it doesn't make sense that you said, what did you say? You said, I guess what I'm saying is there's so much effort being put into it. Why don't they just chill? Why aren't they just chilling? Why are they making so much effort? Why are they taking it to Congress? Why are they asking? Well, I know why they're asking for funding.
Who's they? Because again, that question can be answered from the perspective of people who genuinely believe this stuff are making such an effort because they genuinely believe that this stuff is true, that life-changing technology is being kept away from us, that information about the cosmos is being withheld from us. And so if you genuinely buy into that worldview, it explains perfectly well why they've had such an organized push to try to get this out. The data is perfectly explainable by a ground-up true believer movement trying desperately to get answers about something they genuinely believe is being kept away from them.
There's a contradiction I just heard, though. You said that you didn't think there was that many people just a few minutes ago. So how can you make how can you be that effective with such a small group? What I went, you know what I've done? All 6 or 8 of those congressmen, I went to each of their districts and I looked at the polls not one of them said UFOs was the number one issue in their district. Not one of them. So what's that about?
Well, you just have to quantity of people definitely plays a role, but also how loud people can be or how reputable the people involved are.
Those congressmen weren't lobbied by their constituents.
I think they also get national exposure on a topic, whereas normally they wouldn't. Some of the tweets Tim Burchett and Luna put out on UFOs get far more likes, than anything related to something that's actually going to benefit people that live in their district, right?
But you know what I mean? I mean, how do you explain the fact that these weren't now? When November comes around and these guys are up for election again, what are going to be the issues? It's going to be, Iran, Ukraine, the economy. You know what I mean? It's going to be all, it's inflation, the price of eggs. It's not going to be, when election time comes around, it's not going to be UFOs. I guarantee you won't hear one of them talk about UFOs. But the day after they're elected, they'll go back to the,
But you have to remember,
the program.
We're talking about people like Luna, Burchett. These are House of Representatives folks. There's a handful of them that actually seem to take this seriously enough to actually tweet about it fairly consistently. Besides Harry Reid, was he a senator or was he
He was a senator. Yeah.
Okay. But on the Senate side, I can't think of anyone who is constantly talking about this. I don't know that I would say that they've been successful. They've definitely made far more progress than the previous 60 years combined.
There's a clue there, though, that the people who are being lobbied are temporary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? They have to run every 2 years. Yeah, they're not, Schumer's kind of been laying in the back, behind the scenes, right? He's not out there preaching about UFOs. It's the guys who are sort of disposable or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? And Luna's getting national news talking about her experiences or whatever. And, I don't, if it was truly science, why aren't we pushing fusion? Why aren't we pushing, why aren't we privately pushing energy solutions? When was the last time you heard any of these people push energy solutions, period? New energy. They don't. They're pushing myths. They're not pushing. If you took the money that they're spending on these UFO programs, you could probably, solve cold fusion. You know what I mean?
Wait, what UFO programs? Alleged UFO programs?
You don't think these committees? I estimated this when I did the list. $100 million that they've spent.
About Luna's task force and the hearings and all that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I tallied it up.
I don't think you can solve confusion with that much. That's a drop in the bucket. But
no, I'm just saying. I know. I'm just saying. Why are we spending that money at all? We're out here fussing about all these. Doge caught someone. Studying the way frogs. Have sex or whatever. This is in the same category. I think.
The frightening thing to me is how shallow their knowledge is about UFOs, and it's just an indicator of how shallow their knowledge probably is about everything else that they work on every day.
I mean, Tim Burchett is not, a paradigmatic example of an intellectual. Neither is Luna.
I'm really disappointed with anybody from Tennessee that's doing what Tim Burchett's doing, to be honest with you. You can't preach, you can't go on Twitter and post about UFOs and then go talk about how, it's okay to bomb Iran. You know what I mean? It's just weird to me, right? To me, there's no credibility. If I was in his district, I wouldn't believe a word he said. I can't follow someone who's not serious, and I think if you want to be a serious leader, you have to lead on facts, right? What can we do? What can we build? How do we progress? There's no talk about real progress.
Oh, he is conservative.
It's a distraction. No. I mean, we're builders. Look,
yeah,
we're builders.
But by his own admission, he's also stated that as a congressman, he feels like his job is not to go to DC and write new laws. In fact, he's quite proud of either striking as many laws down as he can or writing as few new pieces of legislation. He clearly is not one who goes to DC with the intent of building anything. He clearly thinks whatever is existing already is already too big. So it's not a surprise that someone like him is not, engaging in the kinds of things that you think government rightfully so should be engaged in. That's his political philosophy. It's a slightly different version of conservatism that I'm guessing the type that you have.
I'm more of a libertarian, but if we're going to waste money, let's waste it on something positive. That's all I'm saying. And I feel that's one of my biggest peeves about this whole UFO thing is that it's just a waste of taxpayers' money. Unless you're gonna provide some evidence. But
I think there could, if we got that far, be some realistic or some practical, benefits to things like, learning how to better understand things in the sky so that pilots don't, misperceive a Starlink satellite and then go off course or run into a balloon or, but that's not involved with non-human intelligence. So that's not the goal that those people involved want to get towards, right?
I also went and researched and found that there's no record of any pilot ever striking a UFO or
there's far more accidents related to hitting birds than any UFO related.
Yeah. So you see what I mean? I remember when the Tic Tac incident happened and there was this big, huge fuss. You had the pilots. Oh, we're afraid of the skies now. It was like they can't fly anymore until we saw UFOs. And I'm like, really? Have you
Yeah,
ever?
fair question. How many people who were flying in a plane that was brought down by a UFO, which is zero, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the other point is that I think they were being trained by our own technology. So nobody talks about that option, right? UFOs were in a training area. They knew where the cat points were. You know, duh.
Oh yeah, and Mendy just commented something relevant here. The stuff that Aero is doing is actually incredibly useful if you realize what they're actually doing, which is primarily adversarial threat detection. That is extremely useful, and probably they're able to detect threats that they otherwise wouldn't have because they've decided to investigate this bullshit topic, but in the process discovered some real anomalies that they weren't detecting before. That is useful.
Yeah.
But it's only useful in a secondary sense.
The problem is nobody believes the word they say. I mean, you and I, I was happy when Kirkpatrick came out. I was happy with the report, obviously because I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
But I would have been. I mean, if I'm honest, I would have been skeptical if they had come out and said, "Wow, there's all these anomalies," But I interviewed Tim Phillips twice, and he seems pretty confident in the results. But of course, those results are just you're hiring skeptics to do this work. You see, you'll never be able to win.
Yeah. Unless you say what people want you to say, they're never gonna.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that Arrow is not a good program. We just don't need 10 of those programs. We don't need everybody jumping on the UFO.
Right.
SIGINT train or whatever.
And the fact that people don't believe what they have to say might be true, but the fact that they can detect threats that they otherwise may not have before is completely unattached to public perception. That still is a worthwhile thing for the military to have, for the U.S. to have, regardless of public opinion. And so on that basis, it's something useful. But again, it's useful in spite of ufology, not because of it.
They know, okay. They know. There's no question. The military knows what they're looking at. Okay, the military knows. I promise you. There's no issue with our pilots not knowing what they're seeing. I'm saying as far as whether it's an enemy or not. You know what I mean? I don't think there's an issue.
I think a bigger issue that they need to look at is what does it mean when we have people who are susceptible to bad information, who have security clearances or have the power to, I don't want to say fantasy proneness to throw out that old, but people who are susceptible to certain kinds of disinformation or misinformation or weak information or evidence of, and then they go pass photos off to Jeremy Corbell because they want to promote some idea, right? Or I think that's something we should be screening for people that have access to.
I mean, why aren't there other people besides Jeremy Corbell? Why aren't there just regular citizens whistleblowing? Why aren't there any if you have evidence, why don't you just bring it forward? Why, you know what I mean? Why is it up to retired military and intelligence officers to bring?
I think everybody's hoping somebody else has evidence that they don't, that they, it has to exist somewhere.
I remember when I was talking to Jason Sands one time, and because he almost came on the show one time, and I screwed it up by being too skeptical. I almost had him, dang it. But I like Jason, actually, when we're talking about just normal Joe stuff, right? But I got the sense that you're never going to get any information out of the whistleblowers. That's not their role. And so this is when I got on that kick, and some people got mad at me about it, was where we need to redefine the term. We need to either use it properly or we need to redefine it, the term whistleblower.
Yeah. it's been co-opted by the community and watered down to the point of meaninglessness. I mean, people call themselves whistleblowers just because they saw an orb in the sky. That's just not. Or a person who happened to be military has an unrelated alien visitation at home, and then because in virtue of their military service, they call themselves a whistleblower, even though it has nothing to do with what they actually were responsible for in their career. I did want to ask Tim something you mentioned about it is a concern that people who are susceptible to bad information, misinformation, or just poor critical thinking can be in such high positions of power. I guess I'm curious if you think that is actually something that can be measurable and screened out in any way, because it's not a personality trait. It's not IQ either. We know that people with really high IQs tend to be really fantasy prone as well. I'm not sure if there's any way that you can weed out that kind of just low epistemic standards that a lot of these folks seem to have. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question as to what specifically you would look for, right? I mean, there certainly are measures of things that would be, having just as an example, fantasy proneness, right? That's not necessarily what exactly we're talking about, but I don't know. I would think you could build some kind of profile for the person who would be approached by significantly meaningful religious, spiritual information and be apt to, I don't know. I would think there would have to be some way that you could build, a set of assessments that you'd give people before they had access to certain information. I don't know what it would be, right? But it's a good question. I would like to think though that there are cognitive psychologists and assessment people somewhere that are thinking about those kind of things, right? But
I think the danger there might be creating a net that's way too wide. So, for example, I'm not sure if there's a meaningful distinction between someone who is susceptible to belief in ufology-related claims versus religious claims.
Right.
And so if the profiles generally tend to be the same, you're going to run the risk of somehow suddenly excluding people who might be prone to being religious in some way from service, and that is blatantly illegal. And I'm not sure if psychological tools are that precise that they can, weed out someone. I don't want to say David Grush because it feels unfair to him, but other people that seem to be fairly gullible.
Why would you think they would be weeded out? I mean, to me, those types of people were recruited for this. The types of people who could be sort of, for lack of a better term, hazed and asked, hey, we got this little program we're running. Can you help us out? I mean, those are the types of people that they would approach to do such a thing. So,
in what you're describing, is the person being approached eventually ends up believing the truth of a program that doesn't actually exist, like Yankee Blue, or is he just a disinformation agent that's being approached to spread disinformation? Because at the end of the day, that person turns out to be a true believer, whether or not he's being paid to spread disinformation knowingly or unknowingly. The very fact that he's the kind of person who is prone to falling for that kind of stuff is precisely what ideally would be weeded out. But maybe that is something that they select for somehow.
I mean, that's what I think. But that's what I meant by vetted. I mean, if all you have to do is make a list of all the whistleblowers and their past, the retired military, and a lot of them had been involved with the intelligence community. I just, at some point they ought to know that they're flagging, they're red flagging a lot. I'm surprised they haven't just, you know what I mean? It's frustrating for me because I don't understand why it's not an obvious pattern. Let me ask you this: why hasn't Ross Perot? Why doesn't Ross Perot?
I was wondering if you really met Ross Perot or not.
We're gonna go down to get a cigarette phone. That would be funny. Colt Hart. Why isn't Ross Colt Hart? Why doesn't he just come out and tell us where the portal is? That would be great. That'd be a great whistleblowing job. You know, where is the big UFO under the building? Why doesn't he? You see what I mean? There are many opportunities for real whistleblowers. They're they're just not.
It's just it's
And
it's just never gonna.
what I
It's like a
hate.
$20, you know, taped
Yeah.
to a string, and you keep pulling the string, right? It's never gonna. You're never
Tim,
gonna catch it.
I'm curious, Tim, do you when you think of cold heart, because I'm of two minds about this. Sometimes I think this guy knows that he is peddling bullshit, like the portal thing. And sometimes I just think he has gotten sucked down this rabbit hole to the point that there's no return, and he has lost touch with reality and with no way to kind of touch base back with it. I'm just curious, like, do you get the impression, is this someone who has just lost their marbles, or is this someone who knowingly knows they're peddling bullshit?
Yeah, good question. It's probably it's never a binary, right? You know, black or white, of course, thing, right? I think it's the degree to which he allows himself to suspend his disbelief, maybe would be a good way to put it. I get kind of the same feeling with George Knapp on some level. He would, when maybe in his better cognitive days, I don't know, would realize all of it was bullshit, but didn't mind just kind of telling stories for the fact that it's a story to tell. I don't know if that exactly answers it. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? To what degree do you think he believes it versus just doesn't mind lying?
If he's repeating a claim that he's heard, like a UFO too big to move, I can understand that being something that he believes because he trusts whoever told him that, and he generally believes that he can't disclose it for safety reasons. But when he starts making claims about personally having seen like some kind of portal or a Stargate with his own eyes, at that point, I think it's down to two options. He is mentally ill, or there is deliberate fraud and lying going on. There's not many. You can't accidentally believe that you're seeing a portal without something having gone wrong.
There's going to be some deniability built into that statement. When it doesn't turn out to be true, it will be, well, I saw what I thought was the entrance to the portal, not the actual portal. You see, I feel like these guys always have plan B ready, you know.
Did he say the entrance, or did he claim he saw the whatever the portal itself was?
I feel like I was listening, right? I was listening to what he was going to say, and I thought I heard an out there. I heard a back door, because he's obviously a smart guy, right? And he's obviously not telling the truth. So I just feel like he's one of these media guys that were approached, again, lobbied. You know, there's several media people I feel like that are just part of the team, you know. And I think it's so obvious.
So you think
why is it not obvious?
Well,
did he really see it? Just did he really see a portal or not?
You have to remember the kinds of things that Tim and I work with and see every day, and the kinds of things that we understand human minds end up believing or experiencing that they generally believe to be part of the reality. So like for us, it's not always obvious that someone's pretending or lying, because we do understand that people can generally come to bizarre beliefs about the world, or have bizarre perceptions that they think are real. And for someone like Cold Heart, again, I don't know at what point, because I don't like calling people liars, but the alternative is not that much better.
I know this is, and see this, I keep remembering back to when, you know, I had these debates in Spaces, because that was the root of it. That was the root of it. You were trying to give them space to not be a liar, to be a believer. But at some point you have to take that space away from them. Mm-hmm. And that happened to me a long time ago. I mean, for a while, Ross was on the fence. You know, he was on that edge. He was skirting the line for a while. And when he said he saw the portal, I was just like, no, you're on the team, buddy. You're just, you know, you got to be going to the meetings, you know, the online meeting, the online Monday morning working group meeting.
But again, I guess what I'm curious about is if this is a legitimate psyop where they're recruiting people like him to spread misinformation, why would you choose a dishonored journalist who was kicked out of basically his profession in Australia, in working for a third-rate news channel like News Nation, to spread your message, why would you not aim higher?
You answered your own question, because nobody else would do it.
I could think of a couple of anchors who probably
Walter Cronkite wouldn't have done it.
Right, but he's not around anymore. I mean,
No.
and again,
I think for some of these guys, it's just a retirement plan, right? Where they can talk crazy stories that even they might admit may or may not be true. But I don't know. Coulthard, certainly with his past, seemingly the exact issue being that he couldn't really distinguish between good and bad sources, from what I recall. But yeah.
I wonder, I often think they're building a subdivision for these guys out in the Montana mountains somewhere with they all have bunkers, and they're all going to retire there, when this is over, like a golden parachute, right?
Well, they always ask who's paying us, but I can promise you nobody's ever flown me around the world to tell them that UFOs are the product of prosaic,
That's one thing I've been able to avoid, because I don't have the influence.
There is a question in the chat I would love to hear Tim's answer to, because I know how I would answer, but I'd love for Tim's take on it.
Yeah, I can't see it though. I think you'll have to read it to me.
Do people who have suffered some form of abuse sometimes tend to create alternate storylines or narratives about what actually occurred to them as a sort of psychological protection mechanism, to the point where they truly believe the alternative storyline they created to protect themselves was real?
Yeah, I think I would say short answer, yes. How common that is, of course, is a different thing. I was just thinking, if this gets to something I thought about yesterday, if I had to give a hypothesis as to how people deal with what the UFO contact kind of thing. I think people are using UFOs in many cases to process stuff about their own lives in a way that gives them a little bit of distance from that thing. I don't know if, to give a very bad example, if I can picture the face of a gray alien instead of the face of my abuser that's a family member, right? That might be a way I can deal with that differently and still maintain I don't know. But what do you think, Kraft? What would you say on that?
I would say 100% yes, and I have seen this countless times. Completely alternate versions of reality held by a part of the person's personality, and other parts might have their own alternate versions of what happened or the genuine one. And I can't give exact details, but there was at least one case where I was working with a vet, and he recalled running over an animal on the road in one of his convoys. In reality, they ran over a child, but his recollection was a goat. And you can see why that would be very psychologically helpful to believe that that's what happened instead, because you don't have to then live with the reality or face the reality of what does it say about me that we ran over a child. That's just one of a million examples, and it happens for children, but also adults in the military.
Can I not push back on that, but bring the point up I brought earlier about politicians? If I don't fault those people, right, that you're describing, right, that have that illness or whatever, maybe whatever you describe it as, not an illness or
coping mechanism.
Thank you. But there wouldn't be one politician that would get elected in that state, right, that I know of. What's happening with our politicians is when they run for office, they're talking about, they're talking about, the economy, you know what I mean? The price of gas, whatever, the war, whatever. They're not running on that issue. And this is where I think the deception comes. They're using their constituents to get elected, and then they're pushing these and it's not just UFOs. They're pushing other issues that lobbyists lobby them on also, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of my issues with this whole thing, is that none of these people were elected on this issue. We keep forgetting that these people are representatives, and it's never talked about. Nobody ever says, well, what do your constituents think? And I guarantee you, just go to Knox County, Tennessee, and they wouldn't be talking about UFOs. They didn't elect Tim because of UFOs. So where does the issue pop up? It pops up when you're lobbied by the people who want you to play that role. It's not those type of people that you're talking about that we're dealing with. We're talking about willful deception, not people who are.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I
wouldn't criticize those people a day. I would never criticize someone with that type of condition, right?
Yeah, and I don't think any politician I can think of would fall under what I described, nor any UFO celebrities. That's completely different. I will say though, no politician is ever elected on the basis of their views on ufology, but I do think that there's a pretty big public hunger for the topic just generally, even if you're not a ufologist, just the idea of, hey, tell us what you guys know about UFOs. Enough so that I think Donald Trump probably chose to declassify whatever he's going to declassify on the basis of knowing that there is some appetite for it. So it's not an electorally sealing kind of issue, but there has been an interest, at least generally, that goes beyond ufology as a subfield.
What I had a show prep ready for Tim for our last show, and that didn't happen. And I was actually going to bring up the fact that, this is Tennessee. We're the state of Oak Ridge, the Manhattan Project, right? We have really smart people in this state. Why aren't we talking about modular nuclear reactors? Why aren't we talking about creating things that could push energy forward? Why we're not? If aliens walked onto the lawn of the White House tomorrow, that's not going to solve our energy. They're not going to give us their energy, right? We're going to have to develop our own energy solutions. And so that's just a peeve. That's part of why I get disgusted about this whole thing, is that they're not talking about what the people. I think you're giving them grace when you kind of give them, an out on this UFO thing. That's all I'm saying. Too much grace.
Yeah, that's what Lou Review constantly tells me too. He thinks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we disagree a lot on whether or not people generally are lying, or there's other reasons why they might be believing or saying what they're saying. But again, it's a case by case basis. I mean, my grace, I give everyone grace from the get-go until they've proven to be deceptive or unreliable, like Jason Sands, for example. Like, clearly something doesn't add up there. Or Cold Heart. I don't know if he's a liar or something else is going on with him, but clearly unreliable. But I assume from the get-go that people generally believe what they're telling me until I have evidence to think otherwise. I think that's what we ought to do for everyone.
Yeah, I'll just make the distinction between. I think I appreciate you giving them grace, right? I just because somebody needs to, but I don't think, I'm just saying, I don't think that their constituents are electing them to this position for that purpose, and there are greater good out there that we could be accomplishing. Because this is never going to be that's the first thing. 3 years ago, the Big Fun Home, that's why Lou Reviews hates me right now, because I said you're never going to get anything out of the government, and I wasn't trying to be spiteful or anything, and I didn't say it publicly. I was talking to him. I said, you're not, because he was asking me to make calls and stuff like that. So you're not ever going to get anything out of government on disclosure. You're just not. They don't. The secret may be that there is no secret, but they can't even give that secret away. Right? You can't give any of your secrets away. You can't. And so it's a waste of time. Right? It's a way to pump up interest in a subject. But the reason I have you two here is because I think there is manipulation of people going on, and it's not right. And you two have, I imagine, did you see a surge in clients, before the push? You know what I mean?
The funny thing is, I think in Kraft and I have talked about it, UFOs don't really come up that much in terms of our actual daily work lives, right? And working with patients.
Of course they don't.
Never, not even once. In 6 years and hundreds, maybe over 1,000, not even once.
They don't come up there. They don't come up when we have elections. They don't come up in normal lives. I was talking to my plumber today, and he didn't say one thing about UFOs. We were talking about fixing his gas pipe. And it's just, it's, you have, at some point you have to agree that it's not just lunacy. It's an organized effort, because there are intelligent people doing it. So they're intelligent enough to know better. So there has to be another motive involved. So that's where I am. But I actually have empathy for, like, I don't go into spaces anymore because I just can't do it anymore, right? But when I would go into spaces and I would try to be cordial with people, and I would listen, it got to a point to where I had to listen, like, anonymously, because I couldn't. It was embarrassing to be there in person because some of the conversations that were happening, and I actually felt sorry for some of the people that were, I feel like they're being manipulated. I feel like victims of those people, Yeah,
there's certainly, a small subset of people that when enough people are reached, there's a small subset of those people who are going to take it to a very unhealthy extreme, right? And they might be, some of them in those spaces, the same people on there for 18 hours a day, day after day.
I'm not criticizing those people. I don't feel sorry. I don't mean to say I feel sorry for them. I feel for them. I honestly, as a human, feel that this is wrong. As what these people are doing is wrong. They know there will never be disclosure come out of our government, but they're still working with government to push it, right? You can't just ignore the government aspect of this. Our government is taking part through Congress and through the intelligence community. Both of those are now taking part in the hazing of America.
And as the information that they drip out in various ways gets more and more extreme and outlandish, now I never thought we'd see people, or at least on Twitter, right, reading people seriously taking the message that there's a lady dressed all in white who appears surrounded by orbs, and and these kind of, that's just some pretty extreme stuff that gets easily taken to be real, I guess we'll say.
And I do agree that there is manipulation and going on. I think maybe the difference is how high up does it go? Because I think people like Stephen Greer are clearly manipulating people knowingly, spreading falsehoods. Bob Lazar, another example of someone who's clearly a liar. So the manipulation is real, regardless of whether or not it is from the top down, government funded and promoted, or it is opportunist grifters taking advantage of people who they know will hang on to their every word. The manipulation is still there, regardless of where the ultimate source comes from. And that's one of the things that kind of I react really viscerally to, is when I know deception is happening and people are being taken advantage of it. And it's a really weird phenomena where you want to stick up and kind of defend people who are being coerced, while the people you're trying to defend label you the villain for trying to show them that they're being lied to. It's a kind of masochistic enterprise, but it ultimately does come from a place of compassion. And also because I can relate to that. I felt like that in my experience growing up in religious fundamentalism. and that sense of betrayal that I felt at being lied and my entire worldview kind of crumbling. So I feel like there's a shared experience there, and I don't want other people to go through what I did.
Yeah, and of course, as you say, the uncomfortable thing is you're perceived as the the enemy if you try to in any way puncture through that belief, right?
I think everyone calls me the buzz killer in spaces. Right.
So, what's the name? Paulus.
Mandy.
If the government can't legally conduct disinformation campaigns against civilians, do you think they get away with paying civilians to do? You see, it's not. It may be that it's defense contractors who are subcontractors or some group like that paying other, private intelligence groups. You'd be surprised how many private intelligence groups there are floating around that are basically operating as subcontractors. Look at people like Sarah Adams. Do you follow her? She's ex-CIA. She has a channel. Look her up, Sarah Adams. She's awesome. She has great information. She can tell you where these terrorists live. She was an ex-CIA targeter. Now she's selling her services. So it's not even a far-fetched idea that there are private intelligence dudes running around, that need jobs, need something to do.
So speaking of Mandy, so she has another different perspective that's kind of in line with yours. She does believe that there is a cover-up, and the ufology kind of narrative is an attempt to cover up something deeper, that they really are what they're really hiding, which is tech or something along those lines. And that is not implausible at all for me to imagine it's going on. And it makes sense if you think about it that way, why they would so fiercely continue promoting this narrative, because they're trying to cover whatever's underneath it that's not related to aliens. And if that's the case, I guess I wanted to ask you, Tony, if there is some national security angle to this, where what they're protecting is, classified technology that might give us a military advantage, is there anything that they could be hiding that would be important enough for you to say, I guess I understand why there would be a psyop?
I just told you, what was it, 3 years ago, I'm the one that got in trouble by saying that Lou was doing a good job at what he was doing. Right? He was the one that came out and said, I'm a counterintelligence guy. I'm not a UFO guy. He literally said it in a podcast, and it went through one ear and out the other of every ufologist. They're like, oh, he's just bantering. No, bros. He's not bantering. He's trying to tell you, and I don't hope Lou's not mad at me about this, but I think the whole crop circle thing was an exit strategy, to be honest with you. I think Lou was ready to retire and ready to go to Montana and own a bar. I think he was tired of the whole thing. I also think George Knapp is way overdue. I think he's really tired of the whole. I can see it in his eyes. Every time I see him next to Jeremy Corbell, he's just like, when am I going to get away from this guy? I think a lot of them are ready to exit,
Sorry, I'm just saying I met George Knapp once briefly 30 years ago now. And at the time, even I can't recall the exact brief conversation, but even then, it was something that he didn't give me the impression that he necessarily believed much of it. It was kind of that, well, it's a story and here's a story I can tell and whatever, right?
I always liked George. I liked George back even when he broke the story, Bob, he was a legitimate reporter, it seemed like, right? He seemed to have integrity. And when he teamed up with Corbell, I was like, oh my, what in the world are you doing, George? What in the world, bro?
Like with Knapp, one of the things that makes me believe that he believes some variation of the ufology narrative is the first congressional hearing. He was crying, like he had tears in his eyes. And that is something that, that is an emotional moment for him, in the same way that oh crap, the former senator who just died recently, who was part of the civil rights movement. I'm blanking out on his name. Crap.
Who? Say it again.
There was a former Jesse Jackson. I think it was Jesse
Jackson. Yeah.
I remember in the inauguration of Barack Obama, the camera kind of cut to him, and he had a tear, and I could understand, given how far he's traveled, given his involvement in the civil rights movement, to be experiencing something like the first Black president would be emotionally moving. And I could see something similar for Knapp in terms of he has spent decades after decades, and for him to finally see people talking about this in Congress, that tear to me tells me there is some genuine belief there. I think he also is aware that the field is full of a lot of bullshit, but that just something as little as that just tells me something emotionally resonated with him about the significance of that event, of that moment.
I mean, even I was moved by Barack Obama. I mean, seriously, I remember seeing him speak at the Democrat National Convention. Was it 2006? And I told my wife at the time, I said, that guy's going to be elected. That's it. He's going to have an 8-year term. And I was telling all my conservative friends, I said, you guys just calm down. You got 8 years of this. We're going to ride it out. But I was really impressed with Barack Obama, with the way he moved people. But that's because I like you guys. I like studying people, right? And I try to be objective about it. And I saw him as a great, and to see him sort of troll people when he was in the podcast and say, try to imply that, that he had seen, he knew they were real was really disappointing to me, right? I was disappointed.
You read his clarification after, right?
No, I did. But the problem is when somebody like him says it, the clarifications never get pushed, right? It's too late. The cat's out of the bag.
Right.
And then Trump makes the mistake of not clarifying what he meant by classified information. Trump wasn't talking. He wasn't admitting that UFOs were real. He was saying he shouldn't have been talking about classified information, right? And this is how the whole implication game works. Right. So it's so easy. It's low hanging fruit, and that's why I'm disappointed with politicians, because they're just used, and whoever lobbied them knew that once they got 5 or 6 of them on board, it was going to be national news.
I guess
it was going to make its way into the mainstream.
I'm curious, like what Tim thinks about this. One of the reasons I really try to harp on, kind of push back against trying to conceive of like the major figures in ufology as all kind of being grifters and liars, is that if you just kind of take that approach, you're going to miss out on a lot of mechanisms by which people come to believe strange things that are false. If you just think that they're all lying, you're going to miss out entire swaths of human psychology that, if you were to learn about how we come to believe such things, might help you insulate yourself even further from falling for that stuff. If we just think everyone's a liar out for money, we really have not grasped how the human mind works, because human minds can be convinced of really bizarre things. And it is really important to learn how that belief system formation arises in the first place. People are far more complex than that. There are some obvious grifters, but there are also true believers who are making money off of this, but they genuinely believe. And if we just think that they're lying, we're going to essentially not understand why other people fall down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a spectrum, right, of the degree to which the variety of people involved in this whole thing believe it, or to what degree it's an economic thing, and probably for many of them it's both, right? But I would like to think that in the future we'll see that people I think to some degree it's already happening. That people are questioning these claims a little bit more, right, than they would have even 5 years ago. It seems like, at least I see more people kind of saying it's just more claims and more dates that aren't going to come and pass and nothing's going to happen, right? But yeah, it's
The problem is with that, it's just a disappointment. It's not a
Mm.
come to Jesus sort of moment, right?
mm,
It's not that you're admitting that it doesn't exist. You're just saying you're disappointed that it didn't happen.
right. Yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
so
that
the next hype cycle will just
Yeah.
be that much easier to rev up, you know.
or that this case didn't pan out, but that doesn't mean the whole topic is bullshit. So maybe that one will be true.
Yeah.
But I think also we have to remember that the belief in the narrative of ufology doesn't just come from the top down, but it also is perpetuated by ground up experiences that people share with each other in spaces and then on Reddit every day. And that is also something that keeps the narrative alive in a way that cannot be explained by appealing to a psyop from the top down. There are genuinely mysterious experiences, some of which I have no idea psychologically what to make of them. And those play just as big a role as anything that a whistleblower comes out and says. They might not get as much attention, but the sheer quantity of them do serve a kind of evidential purpose in the minds of many believers that also strengthens their belief. So again, like maybe even if there is a psyop going on, it cannot possibly explain the totality of what's going on in ufology. There's so many different areas of ufology that just cannot be explained by appealing to a psyop. Number one, Japan has UFO sightings. Different nations do. So like at that point, we would be forced to assume that there's a global psyop. That starts to feel unlikely. So clearly there's something beyond just government pushing false narratives that's behind this.
I don't see it. I mean, maybe I'm going to start watching the evening news in Japan or something to see. I mean, do you really think that it's that pervasive into the culture?
I don't know how pervasive. What I'm primarily thinking about and referring to is there are some Japanese-led spaces on Twitter that are just Japanese experiencers, and usually they have a translator for English so that other Americans listen in. And it's really interesting to listen to ufology as described from the lens of a very different culture. And it is, again, I can't say the experiences are identical because they're all different, but there are similarities there in a really interesting way. That cannot be explained by simply saying the government's running a psyop on them and us, because at that point, you're just increasing the size and complexity of the conspiracy to the point where it loses predictive value. The more complex it gets, the less likely it becomes. So again, maybe even if there's a psyop, it cannot account, I think, even for half of what we see in ufology.
I think what they count on is the fact that people are sort of inward looking and not. Obviously, if you're an outward looking person, I think you're more objective, right? I think, and what I'm getting to is here, they don't need to. You seem to think that there's a solution somehow to disclosure in a way that, what am I trying to say here? If you're an inward looking person, you're always going to have a certain you're going to be holding that belief for a longer period of time. You're not going to be searching for a real solution, right? If you believe in UFOs, you're not searching for an alternative answer to that. It's embedded. So I don't know what, there's something you said teed that off of me for some reason. You seem to think that, well, I'm sorry. I can't explain my thought. I think this would go away if people would just practice more critical thinking, and I think it's that simple. But the people who are pushing it know it's not that simple.
I don't think it's that simple. I've talked to some experiencers, perfectly reasonable, rational individuals who have experiences that were not under the influence of drugs. They were not in a hypnagogic state. They were validated or vouched for by other people. I don't think it's that clear to me that if you have an experience like the ones that some of them describe, that critical thinking alone is going to make you see the light of day. I think there are some generally anomalous experiences for which we don't have an explanation yet. That does not justify jumping to the conclusion aliens, but when it comes to having a personal experience of something that is unexplainable, critical thinking can only take you so far, because at that point you're not just reasoning, you're trusting in the perceptual validity of your senses, and they're not all lying, and they're not all mentally ill either. And so, like, there is at least a really small percentage of cases that are truly anomalous, and I think those are interesting, but they're really few and far between in this field.
I think that also that we, knowingly or not, some people perpetuate like a framework in which those anomalous experiences can be hung on to, right? So then there's this ready-made kind of template about being abducted by a gray or being probed, or right, so that an otherwise unusual or ambiguous experience can then be kind of hung onto this framework. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I'm going to have to go here in just a couple of minutes, but good talking with you. Glad we finally got the show going.
Yeah, sorry about all the technical issues.
No worries, man.
Maybe when I get this totally figured out, we can do this again, and I got discombobulated this time. I got discombobulated.
I think you need to upgrade to at least Windows XP at a minimum.
Yeah. My compact luggable isn't going to hack it anymore. Pardon the pun. But no, I really appreciate you guys coming. My wish for people is that they not be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And I think here's my thing. I think that our intelligence community is smart enough to stop this and come up with another way to hide their tech. I don't think they've had any real big leaks. I don't think, whatever it is, I don't know what it is. I'm just saying Jeremy Corbell could stop tomorrow. The people who are pushing this could just stop tomorrow and give these people a break and let them recoup. Give them some time. This is what happens. I've been through 5 or 6 of these waves since the late 70s. It'll calm, give them a break, give their mind some time to rest, because there are literally people out there who think the world is going to end, and it's not fair. And I feel like these people should be punished for what they're doing to these people who think the world's going to end. You know what I mean? Seriously, yeah. I feel for those people, and I hope for them, and I hope that nobody, the intelligence community is not listening to me, but I really wish you'd get your crap together and stop it. I don't
know. It might be in the chat right now.
I'm sure they are. That's why I'm saying this. You just get your crap together and leave people alone. Leave my people alone.
All right, you guys. Have a good night. We'll talk again soon.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And I was going to say, I don't think it always necessarily requires them pushing the narrative. Sometimes all they have to do is say nothing at all, because a lot of these ufology narratives kind of rise up on their own from the ground up. And all they have to do is allow that story to grow unimpeded, without actually planting it themselves.
There's always been that community, though. That community will never go away, and I'm not asking for it to go away. What I'm asking for it to go away is the government-sponsored part of it. That's what I'm asking to go away. Right? Because nothing is ever going to be, they're not ever going to be able to offer any help for those people. Right? Our government is the holder of secrets. They are never going to give their secrets up.
Do you think that even if
Look
they
what they did to Edward Snowden, and that. Anyway, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, even if the government has had a hand on perpetuating UFO narratives, there's just no reason to believe that even if they stopped completely promoting it, that anything would happen, because it's self-perpetuating. It is a myth that has taken on a life of its own. It's a thought form, essentially. It's a memeplex. At this point, there is no stopping this mythical narrative, regardless of what the government does. I don't think that the government needs to do that much to perpetuate this.
Our government could take care of these issues in private, right? Our intelligence community takes care of issues every day on their own. They take care of security issues every day.
Mm-hmm.
They have equipment that can tell you the type of bird, 100 miles away that's flying through the air. They don't have a problem with intelligence. They know what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. They don't need the public, right? Correct. And they don't need to spread UFO stories either, but they still do. And they've gotten our Congress involved, and that doesn't need to happen.
I don't think that even if they stopped, even if it were true that they were doing that, you've listened to the shit that spreads in spaces that people come up with on their own and takes a life of their own.
That's okay.
They don't need any help from the government for this shit.
I'm not asking for that to stop. I'm asking for the state-sponsored part of it to stop. That's all I'm asking. You're never going to stop. We used to sit around the fire when I was a kid and talk about Bigfoot in the woods of Tennessee. I've got more time in the woods than any of these people. I've never seen a Bigfoot, but we still used to kind of try to scare each other with it around the campfire, right? That's what you do when you're on a camping trip. You try to scare each other, see who flinches. That's normal. That's the fun. I want to see the fun side of ufology come back, where it's just us talking about it. I don't need state-sponsored ufology programs. I don't want my tax dollars. You see what I mean?
Because I just don't believe that they actually have any such things.
What are you talking about? We have committees.
Right. But that's different than what you're talking about, which is a deliberate attempt at spreading misinformation into the population. A committee.
If you're not providing facts, you're spreading misinformation. If you don't have the ability to provide facts, you should not be even speaking on the matter. If you're a government representative, that's why I don't like Tim Burchett running around doing what he's doing, because he has no facts, but he's making the implication, right? So it's an implication game that they can get by with, and I think it's wrong. It should be illegal, actually, I think.
Do you think Tim Burchett believes this stuff, or is he part of the willful misinformation campaign?
I think it's half and half. I think he was easily lobbied. I think they went to him and they talked to him and said, "Oh, this guy, he's going to be a great guy to have on our team." But and I don't think it's right.
I agree. If it were real, it would not be okay. It's possible.
I don't understand how you keep denying it's real when we have these people getting in front of the national cameras every day talking about it.
Well,
right, that is real. They're making implications daily. Mm-hmm. They're saying, "I have seen classified information." They're saying it, they're making claims that they can't prove or provide factual information. Mm-hmm. That I feel like a politician should be sort of under some sort of oath that you can't spread misinformation unless you can provide facts. If you know what? Here's the funny part about it. Anytime a politician says anything, somebody will fact check it.
Mhm.
But nobody's fact checking ufology.
Well, it can't be. It's unfalsifiable by its very nature.
That's the
what makes
problem,
it-
and that's my point.
Yeah, but I think
Unfalsifiable claims shouldn't be able to be made by politicians who have a national platform.
Yeah.
I've actually tried to contact I actually wrote a piece of legislation that I was trying to get to Marsha Blackburn, and nobody in her office will even call me back.
what was the legislation about?
It was the national. I can look it up. I can pull it up, but you probably don't want to see it. It was. Let me look it up.
Sure.
I'll look it up.
But there's a difference between spreading unsubstantiated information and spreading misinformation. There is a crucial distinction there.
I think they are skirting the line. I think search chats, legislation.
You should have Mindy on your podcast sometime. She has a lot of knowledge about this stuff too, and she has a.
What does she do? I gotta vet her, just like all the. Gonna vet you.
Probably
Mindy
would agree with you a lot more than I do, but and I respect her take.
I knew I would eventually get you to remind me of what we debated about. I kept waiting. I was like, okay, what did I say? I'm not asking for people to come on here and agree with me. I would rather have a conversation like this where we're friends when we're disagreeing, and we can like two decent people discuss it without getting in a heated debate. And I've always been able to do that. That's why I asked you to come. But I honestly don't think that it's should be influence legislation for evidence. Again, and I'm going to find it, and then congressional UFO involvement. I've got so much research I can't find here. NGO lobbying and UAP. Let's see, EV. Let's see, Intel techniques and perception. Federal Reserve. Let's see. Oh man, I've got too many threads. But yeah, I'll find it. I'll send it to you. But it was basically, and it was obviously it was to poke the bear a little bit, right? It was basically legislation saying that basically what I said, you can't, as a public figure, you can't manipulate people this way. You can't imply something. If I were to imply something bad about you, you could sue me for defamation, right? If I were to defame you, yeah, that's what defamation. There's defamation lawsuits all the time.
Well, it depends on if you know it's false and you're still implying.
Yeah, and we know it's false, right?
We do.
If you,
I don't know.
That's the whole point. The whole point is that the way we know it's false is that they can't provide the facts to show us it's not false.
But again, take someone like Tim Burchett as an example. In that worldview, they have a ready-made explanation to explain away why they don't have the evidence. In that worldview, the reason they can't provide the evidence is because of a cover-up. And that is an absurd, it's obvious to you and I from the outside looking in why that kind of belief system is self-perpetuating, because there's no way to approach it that would ever make a dent, because they don't have evidence. And when you point that out, they will point to the fact that it's a cover-up. Well, that itself requires evidence. Tell me, what's the evidence for a cover-up? And there's just no way that you can get at that worldview, because they always have some way to patch it up. By that token, someone like Tim Burchett doesn't necessarily have to know that this stuff is all bullshit. He might be a true believer who has bought into the very idea that even the government is keeping these secrets from him. So he's not deliberately lying to us. He has been a victim of the narrative himself.
Don't you see? That's the game. You lobby the congressman, you get him in a skiff, or you just make him sign an NDA. Now they can say, I know things, but I can't tell you because it's classified, or it's, that's the game. That's the,
And
what did I say then?
he himself has pointed that out, actually. That's why he said he's not doing skiffs anymore. He sees that part.
He said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says that he described the game exactly the way you did. He says, like, this is how they get you. They will lure you with promises of evidence or answers, but they have you sign an NDA. So the moment I'm in there, whatever they show me, I will never be able to talk about it ever again. I'm not taking that deal. That's him. So,
well, he kind of already did a little bit, so he can't really preach too much. But let's see. I found it. I knew I'd find it. If you kept talking long enough, I knew I'd find it. Here, let's see.
By the way, Mendy is a macaroni artist for a living.
Macaroni artist? I don't know about that. Sounds dangerous. In fact, let's see. Share screen. All right, share screen. Share Chrome tab. Legislation. Here it is, baby. The Truth in Public Claims Act of 2026. All right. Key sections you've written so far. Truth in Public Spending Rule, right? That means you can't. Can you see this?
No, but I can follow as you read it.
No. You got to see it because you won't believe it. I forgot to push that
button. Not that skeptical.
Here we go. Truth in Public Claims Act, right? Truth in Public Spending Rule. There's a spending rule. You can't spend taxpayer money spouting BS. Scientific Integrity Review Board. Okay. SIP, instead of SIBR, it's SERB. Right. Ashton Forbes would love that acronym. Prohibition on proxy influence operations. Prohibition on undisclosed media compensation and representations. Whistleblower protection. And a part of this whistleblower protection is the actual definition, redefining it. Pension and contract accountability, provenance and source disclosure. This is a big one, right? Where is this legislation? It's here somewhere. But I printed out a copy of it and sent it to Marsha Blackburn's office, but obviously. Oh, here's the people I was researching. Marsha Blackburn, Bill Haggerty, Scott Desjardins. See, this is the point I'm trying to make. I can't, as a citizen, I can only contact these people. This is what makes this kind of irky too, right? I can't contact, if I try to contact Chuck Schumer or Harry Reid when he was alive, I don't have a right to contact him, right? Because I'm not in his district. And that's the way these politicians will treat you. If you call the office, they will ask you what district you're in, and then they will forward you to some trash bin if you're not in the district, right? And if you start talking about this kind of stuff, they'll ask you for your address to make sure you live in the district. But my point there is that I was contacting my own representatives, right? Because I'm a concerned citizen, concerned for these people, and the act. I didn't realize this thread was this long, but the actual act is in here somewhere. There's the seal, baby.
You even got a seal made.
Oh no, you have to have a seal. Okay, the Truth in Public Claims Act of 2026. United States. This is AI.
Well, look, no spelling errors. Good job, AI.
No states. S.
Oh, never mind.
I was poking fun at my own seal.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, this again. Look, I'm not even halfway up. The actual act is here somewhere. I think I actually. Oh yeah, here it is. I corrected it. This is the right one. As a matter of fact, I'm going to download it. But anyway, yeah. I mean, this is the kind of lobbying I want to do, because I feel like I feel like if you and I want to go into a space and we want to try to, make people believe UFOs exist, that's between us and the people in the group, right? But the state sponsored stuff is what drives me crazy. And when you go and when you watch a congressional hearing and you see the jesters in the crowd, that's annoying also. When they're sitting there, front row seats, where are the normal citizens sitting on the front row? Where are the concerned citizens sitting on the front row?
Well,
we have the lobbyists sitting on the front row.
People like you would be escorted out like that.
No, because I know how to act. I worked in government.
That's not always enough. Just asking a certain pointed question is enough to get.
No, I mean, if I go to a public meeting, I'm a perfect gentleman, just like I'm a gentleman on my.
Just ask them. Have you seen the Navy vet? I think it was a Navy vet or a vet who was asking a question related to Israel's influence on our attack on Iran. I think they broke his arm or broke.
He disrupted the meeting, though. You can't. You gotta do things right. You gotta do what I did. You gotta write a piece of legislation. You can't go in there in your uniform and start griping and stick your hand in the crack in the door. And
I think a lot of times they consider disruption to be any question that they don't like.
He was yelling from the back. He didn't have the. I mean, you got to follow a certain decorum in a meeting like that.
The point still stands though. Like, yeah, people like you and I don't have nearly the amount of reach or a voice like lobbyists do, even though we're the constituents. Yeah.
Well, and the point I was trying to make was showing you my representatives' names is that I would have to go. I was part of the group. This was like 10 years ago. We went to Nashville and we had a rally. It was a peaceful rally. We ended up getting constitutional carry in Tennessee, right? But we did it in a very we had large groups of people go, and we were peaceful, right? We just stood there, but there were so many of us. We got the news to come and cover it. I've got videos of what we did on YouTube. We made a difference, right? That's how you do it. You don't go out and burn cars and houses. There's ways to do this, and there's ways to make a fool of yourself, Yeah,
well, civil rights activists were not necessarily non-destructive. They purposely would disrupt traffic to inconvenience people, because that is the only way that you can actually bring about change. You can't expect social change while trying not to inconvenience anyone.
I think the civil rights issue was probably a deeper, right? That's a little deeper than UFOs.
Oh, for sure. That actually matters.
I give all those people a pass. Okay, I'm not talking about real issues that required action, that type of action. I'm not speaking. I'm speaking. And I'm glad you made that example, because I'm trying to make the distinction between actual things that matter, and this, which you're never going to get anything. You're never going to get anything from government on this. But
we have. It's just that people don't like the answer. They have told us repeatedly, we don't have shit. It's just that that's not an acceptable answer.
I'm not even saying they don't have it. I'm saying you're not going to get what you're not going to get what you want, It's like the JFK files, right? I read probably 400 or 500 sheets of the data that came out. All it was like daily intelligence reports.
Mhm.
This guy went, he turned the corner, he walked into the store, he came out. That was it. You,
Yeah.
that's the kind of information you get when they do a dump, a million pieces of document like that.
And that is a helpful illustrative example of people like to spin up all sorts of conspiracies about why they don't want to release the files, like JFK files. They think, oh, well, they've got the smoking gun evidence that the CIA killed him or something like that. And it turns out it's a lot more boring and mundane than that. I think at best those files revealed that they dropped the ball, or that they made a series of mistakes, or nothing like a smoking gun. It did make them look bad, and that's sometimes one of the reasons that they withhold information, is to make themselves not look as bad, but not necessarily in the way that people assume they are. I'm assuming a lot of UFO related files are some agency misconduct. Some of it is legitimate top technology that belongs to us. Some of it is technology that belongs to adversaries that we don't want adversaries to know that we know about. There's a lot of really boring reasons why we have unredacted UFO files, but of course the conspiracy mind is always going to latch on to the most exciting possibility. And even if we got those files, you already know, given the mindset, their reaction is going to be, where are the real files? They must be keeping the good stuff somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's a never ending game of whack-a-mole. At some point,
Whack-a-mole is a good one.
You just can't. At some point, that this is a self-perpetuating belief system, and there's nothing that a human being can do to.
Eventually, you'll realize you're the mole that's getting whacked.
Yeah, and it's also too big for us. There are certain belief systems that take a life of their own that cannot be taken down by any effort. I mean, imagine someone trying to take down the Islam or Christianity as an ideological system. There's just no way. It's too deeply embedded in certain parts of the population. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I can't remember if this is because I met Doty offline like we did to prepare for the meeting. I got to go back and look at the interview, but he said something like, these types of things have to be maintained. So there may not be a specific goal, right? The lore, the myth has to be maintained. Because I think, I can't remember. I need to go back and watch the interview again. At some point, I'm like, come on, what's the whole point? Well, I mean, it's like I said in the beginning, it's a great story. It's a great motivator. It's a great manipulator. It's got to be maintained. So to try to answer why, I've kind of give up on exactly why.
I guess one possibility is that there is no one singular why. It is the kind of belief system that can help cover up lots of different things depending on what you need at any given moment in time. It's a pretty good catch-all solution for a certain wide amount of potential intelligence problems. So there might not be a single why. So maybe hiding our tech is just one of many reasons why that belief system is maintained and why it's useful. It's interesting that he says that while simultaneously also subsequently pretending like it's all true as well. He is fascinating because he's telling you exactly what he's doing, and then he goes back into but it's all real anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I get a kick out of that though, because if you watch it long enough, it's almost humorous, and you realize this is just a game, and it is just something you have to maintain. You can't let your guard. If you let your guard down, I think Doty realized that he acknowledged he'd said some things in spaces before that probably were that he were questionable.
So when it comes to Doty, here's why I don't know that he's working for anyone. And one good piece of evidence that a lot of what he does is for himself is the fact that he has also lied to his own family members about his own service history. He also lied to your face about Red Panda, Chupacabra, and Grider. In this, in
Yeah,
this show,
I don't want to talk.
yeah,
I don't
and,
want to spread that again.
yeah,
I didn't want it to be spread in the first place.
and I guess the reason I bring that up is those are not government-sponsored kind of attempts to infuse misinformation. This guy clearly is doing things in his personal life, spreading lies that are not for that larger aim. If you're lying to your own family about pictures of yourself in Vietnam, which turn out to be someone else, that tells me that there's something more about his personality that is producing just this pathological lying, as opposed to him doing it for a paycheck. If someone's doing it for a paycheck, probably is not going to lie to their own family as well.
See, I think there's a double standard there, because you don't think you think it's okay for Luna to do what she's doing, but not for him to do what he's doing. Luna basically is doing the same thing when she goes on national news and says, I've seen evidence, I've seen classified.
I think she believes that. I think she believes
I don't
that.
think you can, if you're not telling a truth, it doesn't matter if you're a public figure. And this was part of why I was inspired to write the legislation, was because if you're a public figure, you can't just use that as an excuse to spread myths, to spread misinformation.
What if you believe that the so-called myth is reality? So here's the thing: it is irresponsible, and I agree with you. As a public figure, you should be held to a higher standard. However, that does not mean that that is a form of lying in the same way that Dodie is lying.
But she's not responsible. That's the intelligence community's job, right? If Trump says, I think Iran has nukes, he was given that information by the intelligence community, right?
Sorry, say it again. Oh yeah, yes.
Trump doesn't personally. He hadn't personally seen nukes,
Right.
Maybe he's seen images of centrifuges or something,
right?
But my point is that I think the intelligence community can take care of what they need to take care of without this game of bringing, people whose minds are easily manipulated into it. They don't need that.
But go back to what you said. There is a distinction between what she's doing and Dodie. I think Dodie knows what he's doing. She has fallen prey to misinformation.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing. She's too smart. She's too smart. Right. I mean, she's smart enough. Okay, she's smart enough.
You have to remember. So a lot of times, one of the things that happens in these skiffs is they'll be shown a picture like the kind of stuff that you and I see on UFO Twitter every day. These people don't have a skeptic right next to them. They don't have the ability to analyze. It's usually going to be some blurry kind of thing. And it is very likely that these people fall prey to an image based on what the person telling them what's on that image is. So
and that's okay.
And again, but
that's fine.
Notice that it is just.
I'm not going to argue with those people about their beliefs.
Right.
Again, I don't. Right. I don't care if 1 million people get together in a big group in Texas and shout from the top of their voices that these are UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's right that our government does it. I don't believe, because they have the voice that we don't, that even those people don't have, right? They're reaching every possible citizen in our country and people around the world. They're also embarrassing our country.
I agree with you on all that. The only thing I don't agree with, I do think there's still a difference between that and lying. But I do agree that they should be held to a higher standard.
If they haven't actually seen the evidence, to me, I have a very high standard for the word lie. Okay. If you came to me and told me that you had seen a UFO, I told somebody else that there were UFOs, I'm lying, because I don't know for a fact that there are UFOs. If she's being told, this is the game. They get you in a skiff, they tell you blah, blah, blah. They show you some pictures. You've been told, now sign an NDA. Now you can imply all you want that there's UFOs flying around because somebody told you in a classified meeting, right? That's lying.
Yeah, I think that's the basis of our disagreement. You have a much stronger idea of what lying is than I do, or broader. I don't think that's lying. I think that's irresponsible.
If I was her, I would say either show me real evidence, and then if you were shown real evidence, then you wouldn't be able to see. That's the whole point. If you were actually shown evidence, it would be highly classified, and you would never probably get to leave the building, or you would never, not without signing, your life away, right? So she couldn't talk about it if it was actually classified, right? The point is, it's a big game that's being played, and and it's being played out on the American people. She can't, you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, again,
she knows she's wrong. What was her rank when she left the military?
What's bizarre to me. You and Lou reviews are very similar on this. There's this very strong insistence that these people know this.
They know. I don't know why Lou didn't like me. I actually kind of like Lou, but I don't know why he doesn't like me.
Like it's interesting to me that you guys really think that these people who are influential really know this is bullshit. I don't think all of them do.
If they don't know, they shouldn't be preaching from the national pulpit. That's my point.
That's a should, but we're going from descriptive to prescriptive here. These people, a lot of them, have become convinced of really silly things on the basis of really bad evidence, and they repeat those beliefs based on bad evidence. That still makes them true believers. They're being irresponsible, but they're not lying in the way that someone who knows it's false.
If she wants to, you know what Doty did? Doty did the right thing. He got into space. He said, "This is what I think." And right, he wasn't saying I'm representing the government or I'm representing some. He didn't even say he was representing the working group that he was. Right at the time, he didn't.
I think there is a working group. I think he makes that up.
Oh no, I think there is. Yeah, I think there's many of these working groups. I mean, I've heard too many people talk about them. Too many people from different sectors.
But he's talked about some of the members, and none of the people he's mentioned have ever said anything about being involved with that. I think Jack Valet is supposed to be one of them. The other one is Hal Putoff. I forget the other ones, but these people, I don't think
they look pretty chummy in the pictures I saw of them.
I know that they've interacted. I don't think that they still gather together in a McDonald's over coffee and like talk about this stuff, trying to conspire against the American people. I think the
point I was trying to make about Luna was that I wouldn't even care if she came into a space on her own time, right, and just had a heyday with talking about UFOs. But to get on CNN and say I've seen evidence when she really hasn't.
She believes she has.
She believes someone from the intelligence community told her that this exists. The same people.
With a picture, sometimes they claim that they've seen a picture. And the problem is the picture doesn't tell the story. The narrative that comes with the picture tells the story and makes the person interpret what they're seeing in light of the narrative. She generally probably believes that she's seen evidence. Whatever picture of some blob that she saw, coupled with the story that she was given, in her mind, she believes that counts as evidence. And
you have so many different versions of the drone story, of the Yemeni drones. There are people who think that the UFO was the missile coming. I've heard people literally say, look, you're going to see this UFO come into frame and hit the missile.
Yeah, and notice that narrative shapes how the person interprets what they're seeing.
Yeah, and nothing about what they're saying. It's a drone being shot down by a missile. It's neither one of them are UFOs, and we know that there's an HD version of that video. We know that there's a non-IR version of that video that wasn't shown because it would have shown a prosaic conclusion or
you said this earlier with the image that you shared. You said that was from a drone, and then I think you said this is good reason to believe that all pictures like these have the high res plus the IR.
You know they do.
Is that true that all drones, for example,
the whole purpose of the drone is to collect intelligence.
Right, but is
And
it actually the
fuzzy
case?
IR videos don't give you the intelligence you need. The picture that they released is the intelligence picture, right? And they did that to prove that it was narcos, right? If they wanted to prove it was UFOs, they would release the other version, but they can't because it would show a prosaic solution.
Yeah,
That's my point to
yeah, I
those.
know that.
And
My
I said they were screwing up by releasing these videos showing these HD versions because
if they
that
have
there's
it for that,
yeah, they have both. And it's just a little flip of the that's all it is. It's a flip of the mode. Hour mode, white hot, black hot, you know, true color, full color, full spectrum. You know what I mean? They have full spectrum. It's just flipping it.
well, for some platforms, like some platforms go from thermal to infrared to black and white. Not all of them. I guess that's the question I'm asking: is it actually the case that all drones have all of these cameras, no matter which drone you're talking about?
Most of these are the Reapers. I think I'm pretty sure if you go look at the reports, a lot of them are the same.
The Reaper is a combat drone, is it not? Not an
Well,
intelligence
I mean, that's the ones the targeters use. But I mean, they have capabilities. They have They have missile launch. They can carry missiles. Pretty sure. What is it? And they carry the kinetic. I've got the research on the kinetic missile they used to shoot the drone down, and it's the kinetic round that's hitting the drone, and that's why there's no tail to the right. It was a kinetic round that hit that drone. So again,
hence why no explosion.
Yeah, no explosion, just chunks of the drone taking off, and then it falls out of the sky.
Otherwise, it looks like it behaves anomalously. People are expecting an explosion, and what we're looking at is the normal kind of bouncing kind of effect of being.
And there's some parallax there too, so it looks like there's this slow drifting in one direction when really it's probably falling out of the sky pretty quickly, right? But the perspective is that it's drifting down or whatever. So, but again, I'm sure they're probably flipping through these videos like crazy, trying to find those videos that work for the purposes they want to, and then those are the ones they release.
Yeah, well, one kind of example to that would be the jellyfish video. I don't believe the platform that took that video that was taken at night, I think, and I don't think that platform specifically had the kind of high resolution, full color camera. So like that platform, the video itself was probably all IR. And
I'm pretty sure that image was taken from one of those stationary intelligence gathering balloon thing. Have you seen those? They're ballasted or whatever.
Yeah, I think what did the writer call them? Shit, I'm forgetting.
Not Mylar, but they're some. But that's what Michael Sinkowski said.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to say the guy that took that video initially, he did say he did not believe it was anomalous, but it was interesting because a couple days later he came out and he said, after all the talk about what's been going on, I've actually changed my mind and I'm starting to think it's anomalous. And I thought Jeremy Corbell probably.
Who are you talking to? Who are you talking about?
The jellyfish video. Remember that there was a soldier.
I know, but I interviewed that guy.
Yeah, after that,
it wasn't.
Okay. Afterwards, and I believe he said either after following all the chatter about it or after talking more to Jeremy Corbell, he suddenly changed his tune to.
I don't know if it was the same guy or not, though. That's the only thing. Are you sure you're not talking about the Flare movie or Flare movie, the flares at Palm 29?
Yeah, that's not. No, I'm talking about the jellyfish UFO.
Okay, because something similar happened at the Palm 29.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. That's why I was making sure. I don't know who the other guy, you're saying it's the same guy though.
No, not the same guy. So the jellyfish video, I forget, it was Iraq. I don't know where it was.
No, I'm saying in the jellyfish incident, you're saying it was the same. The guy that I interviewed was the guy who said he was thinking about changing his story.
No. So the person you interviewed was 29 Palms related, right?
No, that's the jellyfish guy.
Okay, yeah. So then that guy, the jellyfish guy, after initially saying that, then came out and said he had reconsidered and he started to believe that maybe it was anomalous after all.
I gotta go
And
find that.
I think he's just clearly either going with the hype, or someone like Corbella just filled his head with nonsense, because he clearly had his opinion set in stone from the outset, and then afterwards he suddenly changes his mind, which is weird.
His attitude to me was that it was comical that someone would think it was alien.
Yeah, it was a very strong shift from what
Yeah.
he said to you, and then afterwards suddenly saying, "Oh, maybe it was anomalous after all." Yeah, but I think his initial gut hunch is correct, and everything after that is, I don't know, buying into the hype or just sloppy thinking. I didn't know you had interviewed him.
Yeah, that was like pretty soon after it happened. Pretty soon after the video was not after it happened, after the video was released. It's like 20 or 30 interviews ago. He's a nice guy. I thought he was a really smart, you know, but it may be that they did get to, it may be that it wasn't even Corbell that got to him and said, look, you really shouldn't be, you're really not supposed to have that much of an opinion. Right? You're supposed to leave it vague. Like you're supposed to be like Doty. Well, that was fake, but there's others that are true.
Yeah.
You got to keep the narrative going. You got to maintain the story.
And one way they do that is by saying, well, we don't see it in this video, but there's another video that shows it like going back into the water or out of the water. Always the interesting stuff is always.
Oh my goodness, that video drives me nuts. The one that's supposedly dipping into them beyond the horizon.
In this case, it's there was no such video. They just made that up because that keeps the mystery alive. It's always the exciting stuff. It always happens off camera, or that part gets cut out.
No, that's what I'm saying. That one drove me nuts the most. When it first came out, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I was like, come on, guys. But you see, again, well, I don't think our military is taking a bunch of fuzzy images for intelligence. Okay.
Oh, for sure not.
They're just not. Okay. And if you think that, if not you, but if somebody thinks that that's like the typical intelligence that they're gathering, they're nuts.
Yeah, and that's why they don't release a lot of this stuff, because it would give a capability. It would reveal our capabilities to our foreign adversaries in a way that they can't just like put a black bar over it. Even just how many pixels are on the screen is useful information to adversaries. So it's not because they contain aliens; it's because they can't reveal this without revealing what our data collection platforms are capable of. And that is, I understand why the secrecy behind that stays in place.
Mandy, she's the balloon wobbles in flight. Hence,
she's an encyclopedia.
Yeah, but that's not what people were saying, Mindy, at the time. All of the ufologists were saying it's obviously an alien flight. I even made a meme about that. I took one of those platforms you stand on and fly that you can, and I was like, it's this thing. So aliens are.
I think that question is for you right there.
So aliens are real? I'm confused. I mean, they might be somewhere, but I don't think we don't have any. What aliens is where are the aliens, Austin? Where are they? Where are they? They're never around when you need them. But, well, I'm glad I finally got you on here.
Same. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to have Tim as well.
I knew there was I was afraid there was going to be so much of this talk about. This subject is very hard to speak about without getting on the, skirting this. Like you can't you got to talk about the history of it and the incidents themselves. before you can talk about the psychology of it, right? And I was afraid that that was going to be too much. It was going to be over the line for what you'd want to talk about.
Yeah, no, concrete examples are very useful because the psychology of one event is very often going to be very different from another. So, like the psychology of just a UFO sighting in the sky that you can't explain is going to be very different than like the aerial school phenomena with the kids. There's no explanation that fits both of them. They're very different psychological mechanisms going on there. So this is why skepticism doesn't appeal to people as much. It's because there's no neat and tidy, all-encompassing explanation. There's many different explanations for different aspects of things, and that just inherently doesn't feel satisfying to our minds. We want something that ties it all up, and saying, well, aliens are visiting us feels satisfying in a way that the real explanations doesn't.
That case is pretty interesting, though. The Australian, was that the Australian case?
Zimbabwe?
Yeah. No, the school. Where was that one?
Huh? I think there was another school one. I forget what that
was.
was.
New Zealand or something? Or
sounds right.
Maybe it was Zimbabwe. But that whole story where that number of children were affected was really interesting.
Yeah, that case is interesting, even if you're a skeptic, because you have to have some explanation about why so many kids would share a story like that. There is an answer. The problem is people like the alien one more than the false memory and suggestive questioning by John Mack one.
Yeah, and it could be that once a few started drawing images, the others kind of copied them.
Yep.
But it was interesting the way it was framed. It was almost like if they had truly been able to isolate the kids quickly and then have them draw their images, that would have been different.
Wendy Amendi, as always, follows through. It was Westfall, the other one.
That's what I was thinking. One was in Australia. Yeah,
and you're right about the one of the reasons why the testimony of the kids is not reliable is the way that they present that story is always kind of makes it sound like they saw these things, they immediately called John Mack, and overnight he shows up at the school and gets people's testimony. It was several months before he even showed up. What happened in the course of those months? They're talking and be consolidating their memories. And then when he shows up, he interviews them, not privately, but all at once. And then on top of that, uses suggestive questioning, leading questions that very clearly lead to the answer that he wants to hear, in addition to all the other stuff that went wrong. But you don't hear the actual chronology of events in the retellings of the story. The story makes it sound way more fantastical than it actually was.
What did the adult? Weren't there some adults though that agreed with the children?
No, none of them saw it. They were having a staff meeting.
I was thinking there were like some student teachers or something that were like, yeah, we saw it.
As in like reinforcing the story.
Yeah. Maybe these stories are easy to blend, together from other cases.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I've done forensic interviews with kids, and there's a very specific way that you have to interview children to get reliable testimony that's not contaminated. And John Mack, to his credit, those protocols did not exist when he was in the 90s. They kind of came about in the late 90s and afterwards. But everything that you should not do for a forensic interview of a child is exactly what he did. And so that testimony is useless because, number one, it's not independent of other people's testimonies. They're hearing other kids. And he's also asking leading questions in a way that kids that age really respond to in a really scary way. You can get a child to admit to anything depending on how you ask them. And I don't think it was his fault. He didn't know better. But
you know what I found the most interesting thing about this whole interview? I was just thinking, how many years of experience do you have between you and Tim?
I have 6. I don't know. Tim's been doing it substantially longer, I believe.
I find it interesting. In all those years, not one of your patients have ever talked about UFOs.
Yep. It's not. Well, and
That, for some reason,
the plus side to that, the plus side to that is most of UFO related stuff is not a mental illness. So like, at least people can feel good about that. But yeah, it just doesn't come.
Oh, I'm not saying it is.
Right.
I still think it's an interesting statistic. Right. Because you would think something paranormal would come up, and some
paranormal stuff does come up, just not this.
I consider that part of the paranormal.
Yeah, but in terms of spirits, shadow people, that comes up way more often. This never. And I actually I had a space with Tim and Dr. Dan. I asked them the same question, and all of us said the same thing. In X amount of years, it just doesn't.
Even Dr. Dan?
Mm-hmm. He himself hasn't had anyone come present to him about.
We got to get Dr. Dan on here and wear him out. We could convert him, I think. No, I like Dr. Dan.
I like him too. Yeah, it is interesting. And one possibility is that people don't feel comfortable bringing it up. But I think that probably is not the reason, because why would they feel comfortable talking about ghosts, shadow people, demons, but somehow ufology would feel scarier for them?
I mean, if I was going to therapy, I would feel comfortable because you have doctor-patient confidentiality, right? It's not like you can go around spreading my weirdness to people.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be weird, it's going to be to my therapist.
And people still hesitate because there's this fear that if you start talking about seeing a UFO, that you're going to get locked up. That's just not how it works. But there is some hesitation because they're afraid that even we will think they're crazy, even though they're not. But it is interesting that out of all the paranormal kind of subjects, this one just, again, maybe it's a fluke, but it just doesn't show up.
Well, the politicians should take that clue. They should keep their mouth shut too. I don't know. I don't know why that irks me so much. I guess if they didn't have such a huge platform, it would be different.
I think it's understandable they should be held to a higher standard. Absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Well, thank you very much, Andres. I keep wanting to say Andres.
That's how most people say it. I'm in the South. I don't mind.
I don't like mispronouncing people's names. It bugs me. So now it'll always be on my mind to make sure I say it properly. Thanks again. We do need to do this again sometime and get Dan, Dr. Dan.
He'd be a really good guest to have on, because I know one of the reasons I also suggested him is I have my own bias and skeptical perception on the topic. And so I do think it's interesting to hear from a psychologist who kind of leans the other way.
But I've had him on the show several times, and he surprisingly doesn't talk too much about his work. I guess that's sort of a code. I mean, as far as obviously you're not going to talk about specific patients, but he didn't seem. Maybe it was the particular show and the other guest. It wasn't maybe that wasn't subject matter, but I would like to get him back on and let's talk about this particular thing, because I'm curious to see what he thinks about politicians using that platform.
Yeah.
To whatever you want to classify it as, whatever type of information you feel it is, I don't think it's appropriate. But because I don't think there's no resolve, there's no resolution to it.
There will never be. It's by design, I think.
So you have to ask the question then, is it worth it? Is it worth it? So
thank you.
Thank you.
Be on anytime.
I really appreciate it. And I'll edit this thing up tomorrow and get it all fixed up, and you can go watch the fancy introductions I made for you too.
And you should have Mendy on. She's an encyclopedia of knowledge. She's really good to talk to too.
Why don't we could schedule a show sometime with you two? Or
Oh,
would
she
you?
knows. She knows way more. She knows way more about this than I do. At least
Oh, really?
the military and
I don't know.
psyop
She's scaring me with all her. I don't know. She's kind of scary. I'm just kidding, Mindy. We'll have to do that as long as she doesn't mind a little skepticism.
Oh no,
You mind a little skepticism, Mindy?
She's pretty skeptical herself.
Oh, really? I thought you were talking like she was a true believer.
Oh no, no, she gets a lot of shit for her takes.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
That would be interesting then. I'd like to hear, because I don't get to hear. See, that's the problem. I don't get to hear that side of this much on social media because it's predominantly the other side, right?
Yeah. A lot of people get run off.
Yeah. I pretty much got ran off. I was told. I got the mockery pages. I was told.
That's a badge of honor to have.
The mockery page. Fartus and phony or whatever. All right. Well, Mindy, we'll be in touch then. We'll let the schedule show. My goal is to have at least one a month this year. Okay. So
one per night.
Huh?
Did you say one per night?
One per month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I can't do. Yeah. Not unless I get all these quirks worked out. But
awesome. Well, have a good night. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Thank you, audience, for hanging around for this crazy talk show. If you do have ideas, Mindy, you can contact me on Twitter. Yes, I still call it Twitter. Maybe we can schedule a show. But thank you. Look for the edited version of this with complete all the technical issues worked out of it. And we will see you on the next show. Thank you.